Okay, so just as I was saying, what we seek to do is we seek to promote a positive self-concept and provide the right tools, the right information, the right support for females of all ages and African descent to start and grow and to expand their businesses and professional capabilities. Um, okay, that's fine, Ejiro. I'm going to move you to bringing your face out from behind the screen. That was Ejiro just speaking to me from the background there. So that's what Egeneity Africa is about. What we want to do is we want to see more business leadership among females of African descent. We want to see more business growth. We want to see people whose voices are heard globally in terms of social economic development, and particularly women in diaspora. We want to see things happening. And of course, women on the continent as well. So we do have a few people that are in the Hegemony Africa Business Women's Network who are from different places. So we don't have only people in the work network from Ireland. We also have people that are from different parts of Africa. But interesting enough, we also have men within the Business Women's Network. And some people ask me, why are men within the Business Women's Network? It's because our men are our cheerleaders. They are our partners. They are our allies. So that's why they are there. They are special kind of men who believe in the destiny of women, who believe that supporting women is the right way to go in building economies and in forging ahead as people of African descent. So that is a little bit about Hegemony Africa. Of course, you can find out more about us at www.hegemonyafrica.org. And of course, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to Amanda Nyoni, who is also on the platform here, who works with us very diligently as admin officer. So a bit of housekeeping here. Please ensure that your mics, your devices, your audio devices are muted when you're not speaking. And when you are speaking, of course, please, of course, put it on. And if you would like to share anything or you have a question, please indicate in some way, whether it's via digitally raising your hands or you want to put your hands up or you want to just give me an indication. And of course, if you don't want to say, you can certainly put your question in the chat room so that we can we can be able to read it out at some stage for you. So I would, of course, encourage people to engage and to ask questions at this in this very, very topical issue. So we're going to be discussing, as we've said in our advertisement, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And we're going to be looking at how can we, as people of African descent, particularly those in business, harness the opportunities that are within this agreement. What does it mean for us? How do we identify the challenges? How do we identify the opportunities? And how can we work together more collaboratively as people of African descent? So we're going to have that conversation today. And I'm really glad that we have an expert in the room who is going to put us through and hopefully be able to answer all our questions today. Now, we don't expect to finish at 2, but I always put this kind of time so that people won't say we don't have integrity if we overshoot our time. So hopefully we expect to finish by 1:30, but of course, if we finish by 2, we are still very much in line. Okay, so I'm just going to open the floor and give anyone who dares, and I like to say who dares, and I hope I'm not offending anybody by that, but anyone who dares to introduce themselves and introduce their businesses, because I find that a lot when we come into these kind of rooms, that what happens is that people just decide not to say anything or decide to just leave the cameras off and all of that. And you know that with this kind of online platforms, it's very important for us to engage even more than when we have a physical platform. Oh yes, yeah, that is what our speaker will be doing. So it's going to be a well-rounded conversation. So just had Aya was asking me there about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and I said that's what our speaker will be doing in a very robust way. So let me ask anybody who wants to give an introduction of who they are and what they do. Please go ahead and shoot. Okay, so there you go. The floor is open. If you want to introduce yourself and introduce your business, there you go. I'll pause for a few minutes. Okay. So if there's nobody wanting to do that, I would
I
like
will
to,
dare.
sorry,
I will dare. I actually had to change my from my
your device.
phone. Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please
Sorry, I
go.
had to change from my phone to my laptop, and I was trying to get headphones, so that's why you are facing the ceiling for a second there. Apologies.
No problem at
So,
all.
um, I will dare simply because of simply because of the fact that I also decided to start my business, and one of the first quotes that I used was "daring greatly" by Brene Brown. So I will dare to introduce myself. So for those who know me, or maybe those who don't, my name is Beatrice. I'm a banker by profession. I've been living in Ireland for about 13 years. Prior to that, I lived and worked in the UK and originally from Kenya. So for me, my business and my purpose is I've always been very interested in inclusion and diversity because I feel that is one of the things that is actually holding us back as migrant women. You've spoken about the triple glaze, which for me, I call it the triple glaze window because of, I mean, people who live in the diaspora can relate to single glaze, double glaze windows. So we have the triple glaze windows. Now, with what has happened with Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton said that, the glass has been shattered. So with what has happened with Kamala, so someone has actually broken through. But again, it's only through one of those layers of the glass. So I'm hoping that our children, our girls, will be will be seeing the sky as opposed to seeing any glass or any options. To them, this will be history. So my business is mainly to discuss about or to raise awareness about inclusion and diversity in the workplace. I am very passionate about something very basic, which is hair. And I would like to create a space where we talk about our hair, where we don't have to go and sit in people's corridors, people's houses. You have to call a friend to do your hair. We meet people on the street and we're like, where did you do your hair? Who did your hair? And our products, not the ones that are laced in mercury. So looking for organic products. So at the moment, it's more about what look can I use in the workplace? What does inclusion mean? And then our head and our hair is our crown. So I would like to create a space where that can be celebrated. So if it means we have a chain of, you know, possible salons or places where we can go sit down, have a drink, have a glass of champagne, just the whole self-care with our crown. So that would be my business. Now, I have a business plan which is seems to be changing every single day. But
Mm,
at this point in time, my current ask is having conversations with regards to inclusion and diversity in the workplace,
mm,
a second stream of income for the migrant woman, because as you'd imagine, once you're able to get past certain gatekeepers because you're financially able, it means that those gates open a little bit faster. So I'm also a very firm believer in women having a second stream of income. So I'm in a digital business as well, which basically is you can become your own digital business owner. So I'll stop rambling on from there. So I have a couple of balls in the air. They're still not completely lined up, but that would be me. And hopefully the plan and the end result will be our children, our girls will not have a ceiling or glass in front of them. They'll just have the sky and their crowns will be done in a fancy place. So that's me.
fantastic. Thank you very much, Beatrice. And I will definitely say personally that I am celebrating you for your courage. You've been talking about this. I met you, I think, 2 years ago, 2018, December or October precisely. And you, even at that time, you were talking about, and we met you in the bank, and you were talking about, starting your own business and all of that. And I know it's taken you a long time to really nail it down. And so I personally, I'm celebrating you for that courage in stepping up and doing that. It does take a lot of courage for you to say, look, I'm going to step out and I'm going to do this, no matter what that business is. And I think that when we start talking about social economic development, social economic inclusion, then we start talking because at the moment we are not at our best. We are not really recognized because people are doing well in individual spaces, but collectively we haven't been able to harness the power of what we can do as people of African descent collectively. And it is that collective that will give us great power, whether it be in diaspora or it be on the continents. So I think that this today is really an exciting day for me, because I want to be, through what Ayo is going to share with us, begin to help people think more in terms of accessing those collaborative opportunities. So it is great to see you. I'm going to particularly right now, moving on, ask Ejiro to please share with us what her business is like. And the reason why I'm asking Ejiro to do that, if she's there, is because what Ejiro does is very, very significant to us as women, to us as Africans, and particularly to also African people in diaspora. She's occupying a very unique space in supporting people, because what she addresses is so important that if we don't get that right, I don't think that other places in our lives can align. So, Ejiro, if you are there, and sorry I'm putting you on the spot, but you know I do celebrate you and what you do since the
Thank
time
you.
I met you, and I think that you should utilize every opportunity to put your word out there. So,
Thank
over
you.
to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tolani, and I am honored to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. I am a psychotherapist, and mental health is my business. For a few years now, working as a therapist, like Tolani explained, you're good at what you do in your own little corner doing the work. And recently I decided to create a space where I brought Black therapists together, and we are making ourselves available to the Black community. And that has really changed the dynamics for me personally and for many of these therapists. And just looking at mental health in this space, it's one area that we're failing in the Black community. And I want to champion that for us all. As women, oh my God, if we can understand ourselves, there is no glass ceiling. There is nowhere we cannot go. Because if you harness you and yourself and what you hold, you can go anywhere. So I want to say that I'm here to listen, to become a part of this powerful conversation, and to just throw in that your mental health is all you've got. It's the core for you. And if you can have that right, you can overcome anything. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I
Thank
look
you very
forward
much.
to this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ejiro. And I want to also call on Dr. Ebun Joseph, because she's one of those people that is constantly pushing for the development of people of African descent, particularly here in Ireland. And Dr. Ebun is a businesswoman in the sense that she started her own school where she's teaching people about Black history, Black studies. And I suppose it's more about how we can shift our thinking in relation to ourselves, and how we can help by our own shifting of our thinking, our own paradigm shifts, how we can do that for posterity. So I think her work at this time for us as people of African descent is particularly important. So, Dr. Ebun Joseph, if you are there, please unmute, and it'd be nice to see your beautiful face, but
Thank you
it's
so
fine.
much. Good morning. Oh, sorry, good afternoon. I am here, but I am in my Saturday face. I always say it when I'm going on a presentation. I'm like, guys, I need to put on my face. Okay, so I don't have my face on.
Okay, okay, that's
but
fine.
I want to just say, thank you so much for the opportunity and congratulations on this work. Most times I always want to attend and then I miss it. So today I was on LinkedIn and I just remembered again. I was like, fantastic. So I was just waiting for 12 o'clock so that I could be here. So thank you for this opportunity, for us to come together. I think you started out by saying something, and that is that, we are all doing different things in different pockets, and so our energy is not reaching very far enough to make the changes that we want to see. And, again, beginning to look at how we begin to collaborate with each other. So hopefully the conversations we're going to have today will begin to help us to see some of those things. But the work I do, again, I have changed. I used to work with the Royal College of Surgeons and a whole lot of other places. But since the middle of last year, I set up my own business and set up a school. Right from when I was much younger, like even I've lived in Ireland now 20 years. Even before I came to Ireland, I had always said that I want to set up a school. I did not know this was how it was going to come out, but I've always wanted to set up a school because I say, They teach us how to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. Nobody teaches us how to be human. And so I always wanted to set up a school. I used to think about it like a finishing school where people can come and learn, resilience, where they can come and learn how to deal with some of the challenges, that before we begin to need before we begin to drop into that area where, we have psychological mental health issues. How do we build resilience to be able to deal with some of the issues that face on? So the Institute of Anti-Racism and Black Studies was set up in June last year. I have to say it is doing really, really well. And so anybody who is on this call who is thinking of setting up business on their own, I would say don't be afraid of it. Go for it. It's doing really, really well. It's doing beyond my imagination. But I tell you why it is doing well was because I was ready. I didn't just jump into it. I didn't just go into it because people were doing it. I'm passionate about it. I've researched it. My whole doctorate was about that, looking at the experiences of the African Irish community in Ireland specifically, and how we can change that, where some of us are facing it now, but how do we make sure that our children, the next generations, have a better quality of life? And there is no integration. There is nothing without labor market access. So we run courses like Introduction to Black Studies. As Black people, we're not taught about our history, and so we're taught our history from a Eurocentric point of view, which also creates all of this dissonance within us when we are not sure who we are. So Black history is a core part, Introduction to Black History and Black Studies is a core part of what we do. Then I also run the anti-racism training. And why my anti-racism training is different is because I don't just tell you 20 steps of what to do. I give you a theoretical understanding of what race and racism is, what bias is, how do we learn it, where does it come from? Then I take you to the next step of active unlearning, how you can unlearn it before we begin to learn the 20 steps to being anti-racist. So again, there are just so many things, but it's about how we change our future generation. So that's some of the work I'm doing. But like I'm saying, I'm working with businesses to try and stop them from doing what we call performative allyship, where they just bring 20 Black people together to come to their organization to talk about their experiences. We are not Netflix. Black people are not Netflix. So we don't want them to use us as Netflix anymore. They should go and watch Sky movies, if that one, so we want to see changes so that the people working in their organization can actually change. So those are the core things. So anyone on the call who is doing work on anti-racism or bias, please make sure, don't let them use your work or use your contacts as entertainment. We want to see actual change, in the organizations. Thank you very much. Thanks, Toluwani, for the opportunity to just share a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone. I mean, this is the space. Hegeneity Africa, as I said, creates the platform where in our different areas sorry, I didn't even know my camera was off. In our different spaces as people of African descent, wherever we are doing those amazing things, we want to see how we can get in and do well, especially, as I said, collaboratively. So thank you very much. This is the space to share those things. And our Coffee and Connect, this is the first event of this year, but our Coffee and Connect are those places where we hold up our cups of coffee or tea or herb tea or whatever floats your boat. And we, in that safe space, in that relaxed space, we talk about the things that matter to us in terms of business. I'm going to call one more person before I introduce our speaker, and I'm going to ask them to share what their business is about. Now, who did I see? Miranda, Dr. Miranda Moloto. Please share with its family what you do. If we can see you, it'd be great. If we can't, it's fine still.
Hey, Toluwani.
Hi, Miranda.
I thought I was quietly joining the room because
How
I want to hear
quiet?
what's going on.
How is it possible?
It's mute. It's unmute. Can you hear me?
No, we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought I was quietly joining the room because I thought the speaker was speaking already. I wasn't going to be talking. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. I am in Johannesburg, and I've just finished with my own summit in another room, on another Zoom. So I am Dr. Miranda, and I am Prop Doc Mom on all the platforms. I'm a property mentor, property a podcaster. And basically, I did a medical degree, worked in medicine for over 23 years, and I am transitioning career-wise into property. So I've just been holding a property meetup with some of my mentees and some people, because I'm looking for financial freedom, and I have done property deals that enable me to be at home, more at home with my daughter, and work when I want and as I want. So I mentor other people into taking on property as an investment asset class. The other thing that we are doing now is putting deals together with people who are still in their professional jobs and they still want to continue with their careers, just linking them to viable property deals using passive investment. So excited to be here. We haven't done this in a long time, Toluani.
We have to take a COVID break now. COVID break.
Yeah.
No, of course, and thanks very much for mentioning that. And the reason why this is our first event for the year is because usually I'm conscious that, of course, in December we had our summit. We had our the global summit, and it was, of course, a really powerful one. But I'm always conscious in January that so many things are going on for so many people, and adding another thing to what they have to do or what they think about is not really what I want to do. So I think it's more valuable to bring events when they have meaning, as opposed to when we just do them because we have to do them. So and that's having our first event now, and it's very, very I think it's a very, very important part of what we should be thinking about, and that is why we're talking about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So I'm just going to welcome and introduce our speaker. And if you do see me turn away from you, it's because I'm working across two screens here. I've learned to do that since all of this working from home. So working across two screens. So I'll turn from you just to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is Ayo Aribidara. So Ayo is a trade and investment lawyer from Nigeria who is experienced in working and researching on trade as well as broader public policy issues across the African region. Ayo has been involved in government relations, the draft and the review of trade related legislation. His work experience spans working in legal services and as a sector and health sector, the digital space, government, the private sector, and multilateral organizations. Also, Ayo has written and presented papers on trade topics at conferences in Africa and Europe. He holds an LLB degree from Adekunle Ajasi University in Nigeria and an LLM in International Trade and Investment Law from the University. Now, this is Université Catholique de Lyon in France. I hope I got that right. He would tell me if I didn't get, one of the things I like most about the French is their accent. I haven't been able to get it. So his areas of interest are public policy, government relations, health law and policy, international trade and investment, trade facilitation, and trade development. Ayo was an Oxford Policy Fellow at the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives in Uganda. I am particularly delighted because this man is so well sought after. And it was part of my, I began to understand the power of my social network when I was able to reach out to this young man, and straight away he said, oh yes, I can do that for you. And when you have those kind of people in your network, you know that you have them big. So I am particularly delighted that we can have this caliber of man amongst us to take us through this knowledge journey in relation to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So Ayo, you are, I hope you're there, because I can see you're still muted, so you can mute yourself and maybe show us your handsome face. It'd be nice. We are ready to kickstart with this conversation.
Hello everyone. I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
We can hear you, but we can't see you yet.
Oh yes, sorry, my internet is not the best right now because I'm in Abuja. Yeah, so I don't want to interfere with the network. But yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and honestly, I'm really impressed by the caliber of people in the room. I mean, women in business. It's it's really important when these kind of conversations are going on, because, for instance, my mom was engaged in business, and that was how I was able to go to school. So it's very important to me, and something I owe there, and I'm always happy to be in this kind of conversation, because the woman involvement in trade cannot be overemphasized, but the barriers they face are like they face more barriers compared to men being involved in trade, and I mean, like every other sector. So it's something which I'm happy to go through with and just explain a few things about the AfCFTA and how it affects women in business, and what benefits can be gotten from it. So to begin, and okay, by the way, the introduction, yes, I think you got the name right. It's Université Catholique de Lyon.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So to begin with, I will start by just doing a brief. I mean, today we just talking about the AfCFTA. I won't be going to a lot of technical things, because I mean, this discussion is essentially about the opportunities, the business aspect. So not about what is being negotiated and the terms and all of that. So we're talking about harnessing the potentials in the agreement. And I mean, to start with, the AfCFTA means African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And this agreement is essentially to create a large market, which is the African market, whereby goods, services, and movement of people can be facilitated easily. And I mean, the aim is actually to deepen economic integration across the African continent. And already, I'm sure, since we have people from all around Africa, you'll be aware that there are regional economic communities around Africa, like the EAC, ECOWAS, SACPU, and the likes. So the AfCFTA is not completely leaving all of these RSCs behind. It is actually building on what they have done so far. So the aim in the long run is to create a customs union. Thankfully, most of the people in the room are based in Ireland, so you can understand how the EU works. So the EU is a monetary zone and it's a customs union. So this is actually the aim, the aim for the economic development of Africa. And that is the first step is creating this very significant agreement, which is called the AfCFTA. So to going further, the agreement was based on the fact that intra-African trade is very, very low at the moment. In fact, it's about within 16 to 17%. It's so low because there are so many barriers, tariff and non-tariff barriers, which affect trade across the continent. Also, most of the trade that happens across the continent is informal. And the other side to it is that most people involved in informal trade are actually women. So this is actually a very important conversation that needs to be, that we need to engage in. Then, I mean, it's premised on the fact that Africa currently has about, excess of 1.2 billion people, but the GDP is not even, I mean, as a continent, is probably about that of India. So we all know the narrative about Africa being resource rich, but less industrialized. So exports, the other part to the agreement, the motivation to this agreement was the fact that exports from Africa to countries outside Africa were mostly in primary products, oil, mineral resource, and likes. But conversely, export within the continent is actually in semi-processed. So there's more manufacturing going on for trade within the continent than trade with outside the continent. So these were the stimulating factors that brought about the AfCFTA. I don't know. Are you following? Sorry.
Yes, we are.
Oh, great. Okay, so like I said earlier, so the future ambition is to have first a customs union whereby there's just one common external tariff for the continent, a common market, and ultimately a monetary union. So I mean that's the aim in the long run. And as it stands now, the agreement is being negotiated in two phases. Phase one is supposed to have been done, but there are still issues around, finalizing the tariff schedules and rules of origin, because that's actually very important. In fact, for people in business, I think this is the most important part, because rules of origin is what stipulate the amount of local content that is supposed to, productive content that is supposed to be involved in a product before they qualify to be called, made in so place or made in the other place. So those are the issues that are standing for the first phase. And the first phase negotiated on three protocols, which is trading goods, trading services, and dispute settlement. And all of this, you have about 9 annexes to the trading goods, about 3 annexes to trading services, and all that. So this phase two now involves other issues like competition, intellectual property, investment, and now e-commerce. So e-commerce, I know, is really important, because COVID has shown us what the power, what can be achieved with e-commerce. Like, I've heard people talk about, they talk about what's it called, like provision of services and all of that. But with e-commerce, there's endless potential as to what can be achieved. And when the rules are right, it means there's more prosperity regards to that. And so to date, this just run through what the agreement, what the situations with the agreement. So to date, about 55, there are 55 African countries on the continent, and only 54 have signed, and that's excluding Eritrea. But 35 African Union countries have deposited the instrument of ratification. So that means, as it is right now, the agreement came into force December 2019, but it became operationalized last month. So we've technically had about 1.5 months of trading under the CFTA. But note that since only about 35, I don't know if 35 countries have deposited instrument of ratification, then it means that only these countries can actually trade under the AfCFTA rules at the moment. So that's also something for the private sector and women in business to think about, because it means putting pressure on respective governments to also key into the agreement by depositing instrument of ratification, so that the rules can apply to more countries and help to upscale the implementation of the agreement. So so the operationalization, it became operationalized January 1st, 2021. This was because of COVID, because it was supposed to be July last year initially, but it became operationalized only in January. So countries and where appropriate, like the EAC region, are supposed to have tariff offerings and offer indicate which product tariff will be liberalized on. And this is actually because the essence of trade agreements is not for government negotiators who are negotiating, it's for business owners, like people in the room, to actually benefit from what is being negotiated. And this relates especially to tariffs. Like I said, rules of origin. These are the two issues that still are standing for the first phase of them. That's why the implementation probably hasn't been on a large scale, like it would have been expected, after about 2 months. So there's this aspect, but for the rules of origin, so there is a product-specific rule of origin that's supposed to cover about 90% of tariff lines. 90% of tariff lines, and this is supposed to be done within 5 years for developing countries like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and 10 years for least developed countries. So let's say there is, I'll give an example of this. For instance, for a product probably that attracts a tariff of 25% into, let's say, Kenya. And I mean, in the next 5 years, this is supposed to, Kenya is supposed to progressively, within every 5 years, within every year, reduce the tariffs until the tariff gets to zero. So let's say within 5 years, it progressively goes down, from 5 to 15, then 10, then comes 5, from 20 to 20, 25 to 20, then 15, and it keeps going down that way. So that's the aim. Then there is an additional 7% on sensitive goods. I mean, countries are the ones who would actually notify on these aspects, like what goods will be classified as sensitive goods, in line with directives from the AfCFTA Secretariat. And on these sensitive goods, tariff will fall within 10 years. There's a longer period for it for LDCs, non-LDCs. Like, I wanted to say DC, but I don't know. Does anyone understand like what this means, like developing country and least developed country? Hello? Sorry, are you?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Great. So I'm just trying to be sure, because I mean, sometimes it gets boring, conversations around trade and all of that. But yes, so on this 7%, tariffs will fall within 10 years for DCs, that developing countries, and 13 years for least developed country. And there's a final 3% of excluded products which will retain their tariffs to allow flexibilities. And I mean, these products will be notified by each country. And I mean, they're supposed to be products. I mean, I'm sure none of us here is probably trading this kind of product. Most times they are just maybe defense kind of issues and all of that. So going further, I just want to talk about understanding, what the benefits of AfCFTA is. I know people are already asking, like, okay, this sound nice on paper. How do we benefit from it? What are the programs on ground to benefit from it? So first of all, for every, like most trade agreement, one thing that is on ground now that is a complementary initiative, which is aimed at supporting the implementation of the CFTA, is non-tariff barrier reporting mechanism. So the aim with this is to help businesses who are engaged in trading across Africa to actually be able to report when they encounter barriers, such as, I mean, most times coming from, let's say, non-adherence to trade facilitation rules, issues that don't involve like high tariffs, like customs, excessive border controls and all of that, which affects and probably also increase the time spent in transit for goods. So there's a mechanism on ground now to report that, and this actually is something the business community should hold there and use effectively to be able to benefit from this agreement. Also, there is the other part, which involves payment and settlement system. So as it stands in Africa, we have quite a lot of worthless currencies. Worthless in the sense that I cannot take, okay, let's say I can't take Nigerian Naira, for instance, and go and spend it in South Africa. It's not possible. So if I want to trade probably with someone from that part of the world, part of Africa, then it's difficult for me to do business without having to go through the dollar route and all of that. And probably this adds to cost as well. So, and considering the fact that this agreement is trying to take into cognizance the fact that a lot of women or a lot of people who are involved in trade actually across the continent are involved in trade in an informal level. So as a means to formalize, this type of trade, which, I mean, the volumes keep increasing. this is being driven by the African Export and Import Bank, and it's practically just a multilateral system for the purpose of transacting and just settling payments across Africa. And I mean, ultimately, it's to facilitate intra-African trade and help to formalize unrecorded trade. Due to prevalence of informal trade across the continent, and also it aims to serve as an alternative to high cost, lengthy correspondence between banks, and just to create a unified and low cost payment system for trading across Africa. So this is another initiative which I mean at the moment these are things you could look up on as well, but at the moment it is not functioning yet, but it is an initiative which is being developed in order to help people trade across the continent. And as we all know, like the agreement is supposed to just, address challenges which we face, business owners face doing business across the continent. I don't know before I proceed, can I ask, like, are there current in the room, are there people who currently engage in business across the continent, let's say moving goods from one or services from one country in Africa to another? Are there any?
There are some within the network that do that,
Okay.
that is why we're recording. So go ahead and give those tips for those people
Okay,
particularly. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So as it stands now, there are divergent sanitary, phytosanitary, and technical standards across the continent. And one of the aims of the AfCFTA is to harmonize this. And what does this mean? It helps to reduce cost, because, for instance, if you're exporting to the US, let's say under AGOA, and exporting to the EU, under the EPAs or EBA, everything but arms, or GSP or GSP plus, you see that the SPS standards are quite different for the two regions or for the two countries. And I mean, imagine now doing the same in Africa. But I mean, the volume of trade between the continents and, let's say, the EU is larger, so it means this can sustain itself. But let's say within Uganda and Nigeria, it doesn't make a lot of sense doing that. So these are issues that really deter businesses from engaging in doing business across the continent. But the CFTA aims to also, address this. So these are some of the issues that have been inculcated into the protocols of the CFTA, and some of the annexes address this specifically. But currently, implementation is not at the highest, because there are still outstanding tariff concession issues, and also finalizing the rules of origin and all the things. So the CFTA seeks to address all of this and integrate Africa into this large, market. And ultimately, it aims to drive Africa's industrialization in the sense that if trade that is being conducted within the continent is based on, manufactured, semi-manufactured products, then it means if tariff goes down on this type of trade, then it means industrialization can be scaled up. So that's one of the aims of the CFTA. And one of another aim is, to help feed the continent. The food bill of the continent is really, really high right now, because there's a lot of imports from outside Africa to feed Africa. And it's just like when I was living in Uganda, and I realized, for instance, milk, which Nigeria imports a lot of, and chicken, Uganda on the other hand produce, sufficiently. So I'm like, why doesn't the excess go to, some other African countries like Nigeria that needs that? But then you realize it's not that easy to, transact business across board. And in fact, there have been data, for instance, I'm using Uganda and Nigeria more because I mean I've lived in both countries and I've worked on trade issues in both countries, so I understand at least to an extent how things work. So they realized there have been people who probably try to do this kind of business at some point, maybe one consignment of, milk products from Uganda to Nigeria. But again, you see, there's no repeat, there's no repeat. They don't. It's just one time. They don't do it often. They ask why, and these are some of the challenges which the CFTA aims to address. And there's also the aspect of diversifying Africa's trade, especially because right now, apart from even having manufactured product being, or semi-manufactured product being exported within a continent, even other things like things probably the things that are imported from outside the continent. Some of these can be produced locally and exported within Africa by, other African countries. So it makes a lot of sense that tariffs go down. And I mean,
can I ask you to pause for a moment there?
Okay, please, yeah.
So that we can ask the ladies and the gentlemen in the room if they have any questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we go on. So you can please unmute yourself if you have any questions, or you can put in the chat box there and we can read those questions. So I hear you talk a lot about intra-trade. And even as Beatrice says there, that it does drive home the point that we should be people of African descent, work together more. But a lot of the people in the room here are providers of services, and they are people who are currently in the diaspora. What are the implications of that for us in terms of transnational trade? And how does that feed into the free trade agreement?
Okay, great. I mean, that's a great question. So like I had mentioned earlier, there is what's it called? There is a phase one of negotiation, and this phase one covered three things, basically trading goods, trading services, which you talked about now, and dispute settlement. So trading services covers a lot, and you see under trading services there are, let's say, some annexes which, for instance, cover priority sectors. I mean, some of the priority sectors like air transport and likes, but let's talk about what people in the network do. So there are different modes of service provision. So these modes involves first one being cross-border trade, consumption abroad, commercial presence, and temporary movement of persons. So, for instance, you mentioned the fact that okay, yes, a lot of these service provider will be resident, like being resident in the West, in Ireland, and having to provide services to the continent. And I mean, there are provisions in the agreement already to handle all of this. And that is why I was talking about the fact that right now, there are still talks on the specific commitments by countries, because this is how the agreement can actually really affect people who are involved in service. Also, there's the other part, which is e-commerce. For instance, people probably, have, like you mentioned, transshipment, maybe bringing in product or finishing up product within a country and having to, provide this same product to people around. So there are commitments, and this is why I've been mentioning the fact that there is commitment, first of all, which is to bring down tariffs, which is good, because when tariffs go down, it means you can actually engage in more, do more volumes for trade in goods. Also, when commitments, for instance, in services, not to, I don't know if you follow the news and hear a lot of African countries saying they want to charge a premium for, let's say, Netflix services and other services. And this is one thing, negotiators have been trying to get countries to commit on, like, they won't charge, there won't be any tax, digital service tax, because, for instance, when someone from an African who probably lives in the West is trying to provide services to the continent, like e-medicine, or for instance, and it's being taxed, that means you are trying to exclude people from getting services. I had someone on the group talk about mental health, and I know a lot of that has been happening, via virtual means lately. So imagine there's a tech company providing their services and you want to tax it. So that's one of the areas that the agreement handles, that covers, and it's called trading services. And the aim is to, get countries to commit to not having digital taxes on these products, because essentially you just exclude people from benefiting from it. So I don't know if that handles, if that covers the question which you asked. Yeah, but that area is under digital service, and essentially we still await the conclusion of the schedules to be able to adequately, give proper explanation on this. But I mean, there's commitment on the part of countries not to, impose digital taxes on these products, because they're essentially, going to just limit the access. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. So Ejiro asks here, what is the one most significant challenge to trade?
In Africa or in the world right now?
I think particularly Africa, especially, okay. I'm sure she's talking about Ejiro. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, in the continent of Africa, like what would be the most significant? Because thank you, Ayo, you're saying a lot, but for somebody like me, I'm so confused that I'm trying to grasp all the information you're saying. So one thing that's important for me to know is what's the most significant challenge that we are facing. And I was just going to type as well, like, what would you advise us, those of us here who want to support the continent, what would you advise us to do and how can we go about it?
Okay, great question. So on the aspect of what the significant challenges are, I think first of all, from our own experience for trading goods, it's more about logistics first of all, because I'm sure you're aware sometimes it's easier to fly to Europe than to fly across Africa, and this itself is a challenge for business facilitation, and all of that. And that challenge is tariffs, because previously. And that's why, for instance, okay, let me give an example. So in East Africa, within East Africa, it's the region where people trade the most in Africa within themselves. Like within the region, they trade a lot. But West Africa, for instance, I wouldn't probably, like, on a logical basis, you won't want to probably do trade with the next country because it's difficult. First of all, from payment differences in payment methods, also having to, go through the barriers on the road and barriers to export and all of that. So this trade facilitation is a challenge. Adherence to trade facilitation rules is a challenge, and I think this is why this agreement is of significance. And everyone who is interested in doing business in Africa should actually take a closer look on how best to engage and also to benefit from this agreement. And the other question which you asked is how best to support the continent. So I think that's really important as well, because like I had said, agreements are not negotiated for government to engage in business, it's negotiated for people to engage in business. And I think a first step is like there's a network, which is really important. I think for the success of the agreement, a lot of this will depend on trade groups like Chamber of Commerce, manufacturers group, private sector group, small scale businesses group, and a lot of this group. Because first of all, trading under these organizations, for instance, if you want to trade under the CFTA, let's say trading goods, which will constitute the bulk of the trading activities, you have to probably get a certificate. And now there's something called an AfCFTA certificate, which you need to get before you can export within Africa from one country to another. So, and this will happen by, having to liaise with the Chamber of Commerce, because they issue this certificate. So this is one thing, prospective, business business owners on the continent need to look into, because because it's easier when you work within this structure than having to work in fragmented structure. Another thing is identifying opportunities. So, for instance, like I said earlier, agriculture, for instance, I mean, the aim is to essentially create this Africa where you can actually move easily around and do business easily around without having to go through a lot of, a lot of procedures and a lot of stringent and unrealistic, barriers. And one of these is, identifying opportunities. For instance, having lived in the West, you see, segments, let's say in agriculture now, the distribution network in a lot of countries is still very poor. Value addition is still very poor as well. And I mean, let's say also you want to do business with the West and take goods out. These days, production involves different processes, and some of these processes involves you having to deal with another country within Africa. So having the CFTA, for instance, helps to break down the barriers which engaging in like when you want to bring in goods from, or let's say components from another country in Africa, to be able to finish up the product which you intend to export out. Having the CFTA helps to reduce the barriers which will be involved in doing this. So these are some of the areas as well you need to look into. I heard someone talk about hair business and all that, and this is really important because, for instance, you need to source product from around Africa. I think she's the Kenyan lady. I know there's a lot of shea export, going out from South Sudan now in the East African region. So these are some of the things. And for instance, South Sudan is a landlocked country, and you have to go through, Kenya or something. So it makes a lot of sense that you get source from here and also doing transshipment through Kenya and taking it out. So these are some of it's a myriad of opportunities around. But first of all is identifying the process in the value chain, which you need to engage in. Then also making use of the methods of the mechanisms available. For instance, the non-tariff barrier reporting mechanism. It's of huge importance, because this is how because without monitoring and evaluation, then it means there is no way to adequately measure the implementation and how much is being achieved with the implementation. So these are some of the mechanisms which needs to be adequately harnessed and used to, monitor the implementation.
Okay, Ayo, can I ask you? We have some questions.
Okay.
Here, just before I come to those questions, I want to ask you. So, when you spoke about identifying opportunities, you talked about, for example, agriculture and the distribution network, and the opportunity for value addition, which is still missing. Would that then mean for us as business people in the room, would that then mean that there are opportunities for businesses in the area of, say, proposing a better distribution network, or businesses in the area of producing those value-added products and within Africa, and then bringing them over to the West? What are those opportunities that?
Okay.
Because now we want to. You talked a lot about the fact that the informal business traders are really women. And I think one of the reasons why they are informal is because the formal structure is not user friendly for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and probably they don't even understand it and why. So how can we be able to utilize? We want to be able to gain that knowledge, but the knowledge that it's practical enough for us to say, okay, this is what where I see the opportunities. This is what I'm going to be able to do about this. For example, that distribution network for agric, for example. So I hope you understand my question.
Yeah, I do understand. Like, how do you explained also about, women being involved in the informal trade, and how you think, how can people in the network, women in the network, also support, this drive and others.
Yes, but apart from that, is the fact is are we right then to say that when you talked about identifying opportunities, because that is one of the key things we want to address in today, is identifying those opportunities within the African Free Trade Agreement. Does that then mean that, for example, if Amanda and say, for example, Shola Mobolaji and I, three of us, we now decide, okay, there's a gap there in terms of distribution network, maybe in a country in West Africa that wants, and we want to get into that. Does that mean then that there's an opportunity there, seeing that there is a gap? Is that what you're advocating?
Yes, exactly. And this opportunity sometimes doesn't even need to be like we talked about services. Some of these opportunities simply involve just training programs, trying to sensitize, bringing up concepts on how to, sensitize on farmers who are involved in this trade, on how to, how do you channel their products, and also just helping to formalize small business owners into corporate society. So there's a lot of opportunities, and because the continent is really, really like not as industrialized, so it's a lot of opportunities in the different process and segments of doing business across Africa. So even the what's it called, the input might just be in form of training program, designed from training program to help farmers identify how to maneuver through the process, how to formalize their businesses, and how to even take advantage of some of the complementary policies to support the AfCFTA. And for instance, on the continent now, there's a lot of drive towards having you have a what's it called, hard grower scheme. Instead of outrightly selling land to big investors, you have outgrower schemes. Also, for instance, in Uganda, like I told you when we had that conversation, where there's this project now, trying to link what's it called, to link refugee hosting areas to value chains which are closest to them. And some of these stories even involve like having less than 40-kilometer a 40-kilometer disconnect, where there's a producing area and there's a consumption area, and still the consumption patterns don't just link at all. So it just a lot of opportunities to look at. And looking at the segment, also bringing goods to Europe. I mean, this is something which works, because if there is better standard trade transition means within the continent or within respective countries, then it means taking goods out will be, more the process will more, will be speedy and much more less cumbersome than what it is right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Now, Dr. David Yaluke asks, he says, in the context of Africa, what are the developed and the least developed countries? Because we heard that you mentioned developing countries, and it says countries that are, that's one part of the question. And then he says countries that are supposed to be developed, such as South Africa and Nigeria, which are reluctant to sign the agreement. Why is that? And what are the mechanisms for developed countries to compensate least developed countries? So three-part question there.
Okay, great. So on the first part, for instance, I don't know, I mean, I know that's more of trade jargon, but at the WTO level, one of the issues the US had against China was self-declaration, which was, okay, I can just wake up. I mean, China is probably more developed than every country in Africa, but it's technically still a developing country. So on that basis, I think the CFTA has adopted just the UN standard. For instance, Tanzania recently just graduated to become a developing country, while it used to be an LDC. So this is more of UN categorization, World Bank categorization on what a developing country is, and what a least developed country is. Then so that answered the question of how do you determine what it is. Then on the part of countries not signing, like, yes, initially there was reluctance, for instance, on the part of Nigeria, because I mean, depending on the complexities of each country, you have to do consultations, and these consultations probably take more time in, country A compared to country B. So that was the that was the basis for delay, for instance, with Nigeria, which I followed through with the process. But I mean, these countries already signed. Nigeria signed, South Africa signed, and on the part of how do countries which are developing country compensate countries which are least developed, I think that also comes in from if you follow through the conversation, there was a part where I mentioned like on the reduction of tariff. So it is expected that for 90% tariff lines, there's a gradual reduction over 5 years for non-LDCs, that's developing countries, and 10 years for LDCs. So it is expected that developing countries would eliminate tariffs faster than for non-developed countries, because I mean the economy is quite smaller with LDCs, and I mean a lot of countries make money from these tariffs. So having to reduce it must be complemented by adequate trade volumes, which can, so that's how it's supposed to be. So that's how basically LDCs and DC, are supposed to benefit from these differences. Also, there is the part where a group of, countries which there's a concession for a group of 6 countries, to they're called G6 countries, to actually just have a longer period, for the 90% reduction for the reduction of tariff on 90% of tariff lines. And these countries include Ethiopia, Madagascar, Malawi, Sudan, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So they are grouped as the G6 country, So that's how they're supposed to be compensated. So it's supposed to be non-LDC paving the way for LDCs, to in the reduction of tariff lines.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So Ichiro asks, he said, how is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement doing? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? And who's driving this agenda?
Okay. Yeah, sorry I didn't mention earlier. There's so the negotiations have been going on for some time, and initially it was being handled by the African Union Commission through the Department of Trade and Industry, but also the agreement created something called the AfCFTA Secretariat. And if you follow through the process, the Secretariat is actually based in Ghana right now, and the first Secretary General is a South African, so they are supposed to drive the process. But like I have mentioned, only about 35 countries have deposited instrument of ratification. So what this means is the agreement as it stands will only apply to these 35 countries. Yes. So the other part to it is also negotiations, although have been finalized partly finalized on the phase 1 of the negotiation process, and it's supposed to go to phase 2, which involves competition, industrial policy, and like investment and e-commerce. But the schedules tariff schedules have not been finalized on goods, and also commitment schedules for services, because I mean COVID was a factor, so there was a huge delay because negotiators could not meet in person, and trying to adopt a modality for having virtual negotiations have not really gone through smoothly. So the negotiations have been stalled, and that is why right now some countries have made steps because some countries already notified their complete tariff commitment, while others haven't. And even some which have, like in Nigeria, for instance, we have notified, and there are issues at home, people, some groups saying, we are not adequately consulted. So hopefully as time goes by, some of these issues will be addressed, and, trading can be upskilled. Because right now, I'd say less than, let's say, 10% is not because it just started. But with time, the momentum is huge, and that's why we're having this kind of conversation. Getting to know what the agreement is and how we can benefit from the agreement as well.
Thank you, Ayo. I have another question here from Amanda Tamara Nyoni, and she asks, how then can organizations best utilize these offshore remote resources in Africa as people set up in the diaspora? I hope that's clear.
Please, can you go through the question again? Like organizations in diaspora.
How then organizations best utilize these remote resources in Africa? People, she's talking particularly about people in diaspora, as people who are in business in diaspora. How can we best utilize these remote resources, these offshore resources that we have?
Okay. We spoke through some of the things. Like for instance, some there are businesses involved in multi-process, let's say production or sourcing around Africa, and even having to export them to Europe, or to taking them back, or even having to provide services. So in all of this, for instance, in having to source products around the continent for export as one shipment to Europe, if this agreement is not on ground, then it means even, let's say, you're having to export from Kenya, and you have to source from Ethiopia, have to source from maybe Somalia, and have it all without having commitments from these countries to dismantle tariff barriers. Then it means you have to pay more for these products, spend more time having to do the sourcing and the likes. Then for service provision back to the continent, then it means taking a cue from what the situations on the continent, identifying the specific area you want to go into, and also making use of, like for instance, with the payment settlement scheme. So it means also, for instance, if you want to do business within the continent, you can adequately do it without having to do different currencies with different countries, for instance. So it's just a matter of, and the question is quite it's a big one because it touches on different areas like across the continent. So I don't know if I did justice to it, but yeah, if there are further questions about that, I would like to address it as well.
Thank you, Ayo. Is that okay, Amanda? Okay, Amanda is saying that she needs a little bit more clarification in that. Amanda, maybe you can unmute yourself and just point Ayo in that direction.
Yeah, I think like I got part of the answer. Maybe I wasn't listening as clearly. But I think I was asking in the context of trying to help build Africa itself without actually exporting or importing. So whatever resources, whether, I know you spoke about farming, and as someone who would be in the diaspora, how then do I come in and give maybe a program or project that's on ground going on, invest into it? Because I know Africa has really not been the best in terms of being accountable for people's money. So as someone who would want to invest, or as an organization, and we see the opportunity of maybe in the industry of agriculture to invest into, to ensure that we provide the farmers with the training that's necessary in one area and aspect, what would be the best method to ensure that we are also protected in terms of our investment into it, in terms of getting the most out of whatever we're doing within that country or in that context, whilst staying true to what we are trying to achieve as an organization?
Okay, I think I get it now. So to start with, like I mentioned earlier, it depends on what you're looking at. Like every country in Africa is quite specific. And I mean, even though the CFTA is coming on board, doesn't mean like we're having harmonization of rules, for instance, for business registration across Africa and all of that. Like each country still has its own peculiarity, but essentially it's to facilitate, entrance and exit of, products and services across country. And in that context, like I mentioned earlier, like, giving back to the continent, or trying to, do business on the continent, it's better when it's in form of, like, with the CFTA coming on board, there are different programs being rolled out. For instance, the payment scheme is not even a part of the agreement. It's just an initiative. And like this initiative, there are a lot of other initiatives. For instance, Chamber of Commerce is having programs, even multilateral organizations having programs. There are support programs for, trainings already being put in place as well. Support programs, informed training, being put in place by multilateral organizations, even the AfCFTA Secretariat as well. So I think it has already been, like you said, okay, Africa is difficult getting accountability for. So I understand from that aspect as well, the fear of, what will happen to my investment and all of that. But when it comes in form of, partnering with credible local organizations, then it also helps to, there's already visibility for, let's say, the local partner, and it just helps to, roll out the programs. For instance, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Uganda, there are private sector alliances or foundations which are involved in one or two programs. So partnering with some of these can also help to, scale up and, protect, investments or, services being provided on continents.
Thank you very much, Ayo. And I'm just keeping my eyes on the clock. I just want us to give if you can give us bullet points on what exactly are the opportunities there. I know you've said a lot.
Yeah.
Just to simplify it for people, to just give us bullet points. What are those opportunities for us, the diaspora, to tap into, and for people in the continent? Those kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet points so that we can be able to nail them down very quickly.
Yeah, great. I think what I'll do is I'll send an email to you for further so you can send to people on the group, because because I had the mindset that it's just a coffee thing, so it was more supposed to be laid back and just have a brief of the agreement and some of the opportunities it's creating. So I'll do that and send to you. Then you can also forward, because I didn't prepare any slides for the presentation. I just thought it was going to be. That's why I was asking what the communication style was going to be.
Yeah, it is meant to be relaxed, but obviously the topic is not a relaxed kind of topic.
Because there's a lot of trade jargon involved. Like, it's difficult to talk about trade without having to put this, that, and it's new to a lot of people. And
absolutely. But
sometimes it seems abstract, but at the end of the day, the rules are something which, it concerns everything we'll be getting on the continent, from the food to the services and just everything. Yeah,
I think it's important for us to also know those background, to also have those background information. And I think that, yes, even though it might seem a little bit for some people very jargony at the moment, I think the more we interact with those kind of information, the better we are at identifying those opportunities for ourselves beyond this conversation. So it is important for us to be able to understand what is happening in our continent, even from the point of view of better support for the continent. So it is important for us to have those data, the statistics and all of that. So we'll kind of be able to very quickly be able to pitch our minds where we should in relation to what will work for us as people in diaspora, and of course people on the continent as well. So any further questions? I'm sharing Ayo's details here. So for everyone, Ayo's email address for those who want to engage Ayo in more conversations after now. He is available as a consultant to speak with you on issues relating to starting your own trade in Africa. We definitely encourage people to think more about services to Africa and more collaboration with all people on the continent. Because as rightly identified, one of the things is that yes, a lot of trade activities are taking place within the Eastern African region, but West Africa, there's hardly anything happening. And then when you talk about North Africa, it's a different kettle of fish altogether. So there are opportunities there for us. And I've heard people say the future is Africa, but the future is Africa when we think beyond our current thinking, our paradigm shift in terms of what is possible and what we can harness. So I think that that creates a lot of opportunities for us. Any questions or any comments before we draw a close, pull down the curtains. Someone said, "Good afternoon. I will appreciate it if the bullet points of the opportunity can be emailed to me, please." The bullet points of the opportunities will be put on the WhatsApp platform for those who are within the network, to be honest, because emailing to every single person might not be what I want to do. So definitely those who are on the platform, I would put whatever IO sends me there on the platform for those who are within the network. So that's, I suppose that would be easier for everybody to do. Okay, so any further comments, and anybody who has a last word? Ayo, do you have more for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's been nice having this conversation. I know there are not too many questions like afterwards, because yeah, it sounds strange, but I'll put together the PowerPoint and just send to the bullet point and just send. And I think probably from there we'll have further engagement on, what we can be done.
Yeah, I don't think it's been that strange, Ayo. So I think that just as you rightly said, it's just a a new thing for us as business people to think about. So it's not been that strange. We have understood the things you said. And I think for us, it is going and thinking about what those opportunities are and looking even deeper than we have been doing before. So indeed, what you have shared with us are things that we understand. Someone asked here, Etedu Matia says, what is your overall view about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? Do we envisage success?
I mean, that's a big question, because we don't want to be perfect of doom or something, but I mean, yes, we say success, but I mean, there are definitely different factors that would help achieve success. I think first is, having adequate commitment from countries to abide by the rules. I know recently there have been this group clamoring for under dispute settlement scheme, because Africa is quite dynamic, and they're saying, if you want, you can't expect just countries to do litigation of, like for instance, if you're gonna put in place the fact that, okay, if you're gonna consider the fact that there'll be a lot of people from outside the continent doing trade, and we don't know what the volume will be, but let's say the volume is not so huge, and there are trade disputes arising from this. How do you address this when you expect only countries to initiate dispute settlement? So they are saying, the dispute settlement scheme procedure and process should accommodate private businesses, and that's a huge debate already. I know that. So these are some of the issues on ground, but I think it's a learning process, like it is with the operationalization. A lot of what needs to be on ground is not on ground yet, or are not on ground yet. So it means we keep learning, and the aim is, I mean, the overall drive has been there, like, let's get this thing working, but we just need to watch and also support the drive, because there's really no answer to whether it will work or not, but we expect it to work. That's the aim. That's the belief.
Okay. I just have a question for you here, and it's a scenario I want to paint. I have a friend in Uganda who says, look, I want to be able to bring stuff into the West, into Ireland or the UK. She says, oh, Uganda has so much in terms of fruits, and a lot of times they just lie there, and when the people have finished their own consumption, nothing is done with the rest. They just squat. I don't know if that's true, because you have lived in Uganda as well, but that's what she says to me. And she says, okay, I would like to be able to, because, and she said, when we want to buy those dried mangoes, those dried fruits, we have to go to the shops, and they are sold to us at such a high price because they have been taken out of Uganda by Westerners who have gone to transform them, added value, and then bringing them back into Uganda and selling to us at a higher price. Whereas, of course, which is the story of Africa, they buy from us very cheap, and then. So the question is, if my friend wants to now get into a business, and bring in those kind of goods into, say, for Ireland, for example, what is the implication of that in relation to the Continental Free Trade Agreement? Okay, she's based in Uganda. She wants to start adding value to the products that are there, and then she wants to bring them down to Ireland. What are the, and of course okay, she'll have contact in Ireland here. What are the implications of that for those kind of transnational collaborations?
Okay, so
I hope I've not gone long-winded. I hope you understand me.
No, yeah, I understand what you said. I understand definitely. Like, she wants to export to Ireland, and what
yes.
are the implications of that for the CFTA? So,
Yes.
it is important to know that I mean, in Africa there are different trading regimes. CFTA aims specifically to improve trade within the continent. So if she's trading, let's say, outside the continent, like wants to trade outside the continent, like the rules itself, which will affect tariffs and all of that, is not governed by the CFTA. It's gonna be a different set of rules. Yeah, so it's probably there's an FTA or some other agreement with. Oh, since it's the EU, so most times it's going to be the everything but harms or GSP rules that govern that transaction. But what the CFTA in the form of which the CFTA might be of use to her is, let's say she's also sourcing for more of this product from the next country.
Yeah.
That's why trade is quite complex, because there's a lot of rules being involved. She's sourcing, and also trade transition measures, across the border and all of that. Because if she's sourcing from another country, then she has to, use the CFTA rules or the EAC rules, which will apply to her in that regard. So the CFTA as a whole is not the agreement that will probably affect that specific trade with Ireland. It's the EU, Uganda rules that apply. And this
because
has been there before even the CFTA.
So the free trade agreement really is us looking intra. So the
advantage, so that's like,
the advantage for us who are in the room now and based outside of Africa is to actually put on that our Africa nationality.
Exactly, like trading, like intra-African trade, like
exactly. So we leave our Irishness, and then become African again for the purpose of the free to harness the opportunity for the free trade agreement.
Yes, exactly. It's just like people who export coffee and they have to source from a few other countries and just bring it to one country and process, then take it out. Then also setting up production. I mean, for instance, if you want to set up production, in one African country, even for export out, and you have to do, transshipment and all of that, like bringing the components, and you have to So all of this, it's just a matter of policies that rules that apply. But the AfCFTA essentially, applies when two African countries which have signed this agreement are involved in, the trade and all of that. Yeah. So that's why it applies specifically.
So for the likes of people of like AGRO who provide services, and if we say, okay, they're called essential services, right? If AGRO, a therapist provides that, she's going to be wearing a Nigerian cap for that purpose, even though it's digital trade.
Yeah, because for instance, she could, let's say if there's for instance, she has a telemedicine or service provision platform that is based in Nigeria. And I mean, she could be anywhere to provide the service, right? But essentially, the domicile of the business is Nigeria, and she has to provide services across, the African continent. Then, I mean, the rules will apply in that regard. Yeah.
Perfect.
So, so exactly.
Thank you very much, Ayo, and thanks to everyone who's joined the conversation today. I hope that it's been of some value or the other to you. We definitely will be engaging with you more on, even as Ayo sends more information to us. Our next event is on the 13th of March, and we'll be speaking with somebody who's also an expert in women trading, women of Africa, whether trading which way or that way. She's from South Africa. Her name is Lerato. I can't pronounce her surname, so I don't want to mispronounce it. But anyway, so it's March 13th. I'll keep you posted. Any last thoughts? I want to thank everyone that's been in the room today. Beatrice, Miranda, Shola, Dr. David Olayinka, Tedu Matia, Ian Sherry, and Hertie, and everyone else who I can see and I cannot see on this my small screen. Thank you so much for joining us today. We do have the link there on the chat if you want to join the HEA Business Women's Network, and definitely we put things on the platform to grow the network. Essentially, what we want to do is to ensure that we equip ourselves with all the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes, and also the information that we need to be able to grow our businesses in a very strategic way. And of course, to provide that platform for collaborations as well. So thank you so much. Thank you. And if there's no last words from anybody, it's a good afternoon. The room will still be open until about 2 o'clock. So definitely use this opportunity to network as well. Hear from others what they do. Find out ways you can collaborate. If you want to get into property business, Miranda is there. She's fantastic. I tell you that, not because I'm in property, but because I've heard her do work and I've heard other people talk about her. And so if you want to talk about Black studies, talk to Eben Joseph. So there's a lot of people in the room that you can network with. And of course, more people on the network that we can network with. It actually starts from networking. From networking, we get to know ourselves more. Those barriers are broken, those mistrust, distrusts, and all those barriers within our minds are cut down, they're broken down because we are engaging more. So it is important for us to engage more and more and more. So that's what the network is about. So the room is open, and thanks very much. I'm going to stop recording now, and if there's no last word, thank you once again.